Okay, super.
Yeah, you've texted me, so.
Oh, so, okay, so I got it.
There's a physical copy of the bylaws.
There's bylaws?
Yes. Let's see. I can give you one, Ben. Do you want a copy?
Sure. I don't know what to do with it, but.
You're
Probably.
part of,
Frame it or something.
So if I'm
yeah.
part of this crazy,
you're like a, yeah, you're a staff member to the board. So,
Hey, Gary, can I ask you a question when you get done?
Yeah,
So, your group that you have on East Bluff,
yeah,
where you've got kind of your own plan going and it's working really well.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So I know that's all private property. Do you consult with?
Well, wait a minute, it's city property. That's-
Oh, the
most of
drain,
that-
the
most-
drain.
Most of that land is city property that we're trimming in.
Okay. You know what I was thinking of is behind my old house across from Pontius there.
Oh, that's private there,
That's
isn't it?
private there, yeah.
Where we, yeah, so the tell you what, let me finish this.
Yeah, no.
And that's fine, because I'm in the middle of it, and then I will be very happy to give you the whole
The skinny.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That helps.
yeah. absolutely.
There we are.
Yeah, so Deanna, to respond to your question, my glasses are fogging up. I guess I'll do better to take them off, but I still can't see them. So yeah, that's city property. And we have those 8 homes that are on the rim and above the city property.
Yes.
So we have-
Welcome, and thank you for choosing free conference call.
So we've been working very cooperatively as a group and
If
with
you are the
them
host,
to put
please
in
help you.
vegetation management plans each
Thank
year.
you.
and do
You are the
30%
only
of that.
participant in the conference.
So our basic point is, it's not in dispute, it's not broken there, so let's let that keep going.
Got it.
Yeah.
My question was, oh, you're still doing, we can talk later.
Sure, anytime. Hi, Andrew.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
And how are you?
How are you? I got an agenda, you need one?
Got one. Thanks.
Okay.
I'll take one.
I have an agenda.
Great.
Very good agenda.
Light plan, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Here's the whole thing. Got some other agendas there.
So Sue said she's probably gonna call in. And we need Mark.
Mark, Jeff,
Jeff resigned.
okay, too busy.
Yeah. So Sue, Mark, and Cece. But we don't have a meeting.
It sounds like Joe passed.
Gary, we really enjoy your guitar concert.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. There's Mark.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Mark. Oh, sweet. Thank you.
Copy.
Appreciate it. Here's your copies.
Okay.
Agenda and bylaws.
Thanks.
Fifi? Hello. How are you?
Doing good? I'm doing good.
Good.
Cece, you can sit right there.
Oh, my, it's just gorgeous.
If you want to be on the camera,
Yeah, I spent all morning-
Pardon?
if you want to be on the camera, you can sit right there.
I don't want to be on the camera. Where can I sit that I'm not on the camera?
Over there.
Is that to say I'm on the?
You're on the camera.
Yeah.
Double Dennis
Where's
at
the
it.
camera itself?
It's right here.
Oh, so if I sit anywhere down
Yeah, you
here-
can sit down there, yeah.
Is this material for the meeting?
Oh, no, right here. Here, I'll put it on the board, but this is just the extra material. Sue, did you join us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there's some suspicious things going on. And I.
Let's give us a couple more minutes,
Yeah, I
Sue.
need quantification. And some of that is like, what are we watering?
Oh, that's the planning.
We don't have any answers to that.
We have the.
Oh, yeah, last night.
Yep.
And do we have name tags? Name tags?
The other ones that got pulled out,
For the tree board members?
I don't know what they are. I don't know. I think that those two, again, they were planted 5 years ago.
The what?
Yeah.
The print on whatever was before that. I
Well, you
couldn't read
mentioned
it.
one.
Oh, that was small, yeah. I'm sorry. It's bigger now.
Well, so water seems to be the thing we notice has the biggest impact right now. Because everybody can keep theirs wandering. And usually that turns the trees up. And sometimes bad.
I just wondered if you had a chance to look at it.
No, I should go down there like right after this. Yeah. I mean, it's usually good to see when they come out, if I can be there, because then I can see if there's root abnormalities or if there's defects to the stem. What we see a lot of them is if they weren't cut, like the twine still there.
Yeah.
One thing we're seeing a lot with the weird weather this year is that there's even though trees are getting water, they're drying out because of the discrepancy between how much water can get through the basket, the burlap stacking pole. It works like a wick and dries the soil. So that's really
So
confusing.
did that show up like 5 years later, 4 years later?
Yeah, it's usually not instant.
Okay. Maybe that's what happened.
Usually the tide trees shows up really, 5 to 10 years after they've been planted. And we're getting that.
Okay, I think we should get started here. It's 1 past noon, July 17th.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so roll call. Cece Johnson,
Here.
Mark Gilbert,
Here.
Sue Stewart,
Here.
Dana Mulder.
Here.
And Jeff Granger is not here. Yesterday, he submitted his resignation. He has too much personal things going on in his life. He can't commit. But he said he was really proud of the work that the tree board has done, as he was one of the original members, and he wishes us best luck. So we will search for a new tree advisory board member.
I have a suggestion, actually. I talked to Matt about it. Jan Schleiba. She's very interested.
Okay, well, we'll put out the application request and
Yep.
have her
I'll
contact
let her
Matt
know.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to update that so you guys know. Next item is approval of the minutes of June 19th. Any corrections or modifications?
I see I was listed as attending twice.
This is the second time that happened. We'll get you out of there. Any other concerns? Sue, anything on your end?
Nope.
Okay, so then I'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Cece made that motion, a second.
Okay.
Dana seconds. Mark Gilbert? Yes. Cece Johnson?
Yes.
Dana Mulder?
Yes.
And Sue Stewart?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is board communications. I know Mark Gilbert submitted the tree planting application for relief and they accepted it. And we are awarded the money, I'm assuming, for a planting in spring 2021. Anything else you think the board should know right now, Mark?
No, just to remind them that, remind everyone that our obligation would be to, in-kind services would be pre-drill the holes, stage the trees, provide mulch, and volunteer service. They'll send one of their representatives in later this summer to take a look at sites, discuss species of trees. They order the trees, have them delivered. They will be potted, 1.5 to 2 inch caliber.
That is
Mark,
awesome.
I can barely hear you.
Must be my mask, Sue.
Yeah, but basically just went over, Sue, that we have obligations underneath with the grant as far as providing voluntary services and in-kind services. But this would be for spring 2021, so we have time to plan and figure that out. But I just want to thank Mark for taking some time out of his busy life to submit that application. So anything that we get from our tree board members, our volunteers, is always appreciated. It relieves some of the burden on staff, so thank you. So we're looking forward to that next spring. We can do some more planning in the winter time.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
We've got plenty.
We have plenty of time. Any other board communications?
I just had one more question for Mark. Did we find out if we can submit a second time or a third time or?
I didn't
Okay.
do that. I haven't followed that up, but when the representative comes,
Sound good.
she'll want to meet with board members if you're willing to, as we go around, so.
Sure.
Sue, do you have anything?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Public comment. Before we go into public comment, Dana and I yesterday went out to Lisa Nichols. Is that how you pronounce her name? Nichols' home last night, or yesterday morning. The property behind them had clear cut some trees in their backyard. And I know Lisa had some concerns about the process of being able to actually clear cut private property, as well as some of the mess that was left behind from the cutting. I know.
Very aggressive.
It's 638 West Bluff.
Okay, thank you.
She backs
When-
up to Sayed off Lake
Sand
Street.
Drive, which is up on the second bluff off Lake Street.
So basically, before I'll let Lisa speak, I just wanted to continue with where I was going here. Was I communicated to her that we don't have any ordinances that prohibits cutting of trees on private property. That we did discuss, and I know you weren't here for this, Dana, but in our draft tree plan about potentially creating either advocating for creating ordinances or educational campaigns to the public to educate them about proper cutting and what we'd like to see as far as urban forestry goes around town. So I don't think have any teeth, and I expressed it to Lisa, expressed it to her that we don't have any teeth in our ordinance to tell someone that they can't cut down trees on their property. But she did also express some concern about the mess that was left behind. So I guess I'll pass it to you, Lisa, if you have anything additional to say.
Yes, we're talking probably about 30 trees, not just a few. And most of them were chopped up in a chipper because we allowed access so that they could do that and not have them lay. But there are a number of large ones that are just laying with all their leaves and just kind of there. And it kind of looks like a tornado came through. And so what I was asking Victor and Dana was, is there anything about that they have to kind of clean this up, that it can just lay there? Like if someone in town here cut 10 trees around their house and just leave them all lay, there's no, ordinance that you can't do that. So that's what we're discussing. And if it was anything at a certain number of trees and nothing's going to be built there, it's not like a home site or something. Is there anything about you have to get a permit to cut 30 trees, or anything like that because of erosion or habitat or something like that? And so we talked maybe just some ideas that could come up to the homeowners up there about some abatement or getting rid of this, all the debris from some of the big trees, but that's kind of where we are now.
So accessibility is the issue here for them getting in to remove trees, and the owner had told Lisa that it would just be small saplings, and then they came in and actually clear cut, large trees, like maybe up to, I don't know, what do you think, 18 inches?
Yeah, there was a pretty good sized one. And I think.
It's right next to
object-
Bluff Gardens, yeah.
Yes, the objective was to reclaim their summer view of the water. They have a fall and winter because the leaves are all down. But in the summer with the trees, so the idea was they were gonna do some trimming, maybe some topping and some saplings. And what actually happened then about 10 days ago is they clear cut from the back of my lot all the way to the base of the bluff.
So this brings up another point too, is this is private property, as Victor said, but this is sort of the second bluff in town. So we've got the main bluff below 119, but then there's kind of a flat area and then a secondary bluff above that. And it's very steep. So again, it's a private property thing, but I mean, it's sort of a watershed, erosion control, slope stability thing that does affect, you know, other people other than just the people that own the property.
Yeah, so
Well,
So it brings up some issues that I think we should just discuss on a broader scale as tree board for the future. And Victor said there's no way to really make them remove the trees that are there now. And Lisa's afraid to let them back on the property because there's a bunch more trees that then they might go after. And I guess they still could come down from the top and leave them lay on the ground.
They could.
Mark, you,
Well, Lisa, I share your concern. I mean, this is the second instance in less than a year where people pretty much come in and clear cut. We had a situation on Traverse Street where they took down almost every tree on the property, and we're losing more tree canopy than we're able to replace. And I wish there was some teeth that we could put into it, but private property, it makes it very difficult to do. Again, I know some communities have passed ordinances that to protect heritage trees of certain sizes and whatnot. I don't know whether that's a possibility we could do, but I certainly share your concern and frustration.
Yeah, luckily some of the big oaks they couldn't touch because of this
Oak wilt.
insect that has to
Oak
be
wilt,
dormant,
yeah.
like in the winters, and that's the only time you can do it. So we're hoping that if anything, they would trim the dead stuff and not touch those. So it's kind of a black and white. They have the full trees, which it used to be, and the second half of their lot, where they kind of look over towards the southwest, is like a bomb went through. So it's very interesting. And my house is brand new. We just moved in a couple days ago. And of course, we faced it to look at the woods. And so now I'm looking at the cost of doing some landscaping back there so that it makes me not have to be so sad and look at that every day.
I think the other difficulty too is once we get into the season when staff isn't running, there would be nothing to stop them from coming in and cutting all the rest of the large oaks.
So we're hoping, because that does nothing for their view, that they'll leave them. So we're hoping that what they cut, and actually the tree personnel said they were trying to talk them into just cutting until their view was not improved anymore and then stop. But they decided that some of those other trees in 10 years would be high, so we should just cut them now. So I'm assuming the right hand, since they don't even face that way, I'm hoping that they'll just leave it as it is.
and I'll follow up on the whole leaving the trees, the lumber, the wood on the property. I talked with our zoning administrator and we looked at the blight section of our ordinance, and it really focuses on junk and trash. And the definition of junk was used wood, used lumber, used metal, things that have been used for perhaps construction projects. However, we haven't ever enforced anything like that when someone cuts down a few trees on their properties, such as on the bluff, and they leave the private properties and they might leave the trees there. We never enforced people doing that. However, there have been times historically where we have enforced such things where they were in the curtilage of the property, that is like their front yard. So in this instance, this was the way backyard of this person's property. You know, it's not a front yard. It wasn't an issue, but if, for example, if the house is right here on Main Street, all chopped down their trees and left them in the front yard, things like that have been enforced. So right now it's just a very vague area. If we do go enforcing that, then we'd have to do it for every single, how many trees do we do it for? You know, where on the property does it stop? So it's very vaguely written. So we're kind of hesitant to based on the way the language is right now, the blight ordinance, to go pursue that. But it's not it is an option if council wanted to, for example, pursue something more detail on this, on both of these fronts, on clear cutting and or leaving trees and stumps there. However, sorry, not stumps, but logs. At this time, we've just never enforced it. So it'd be very hard.
Yeah, maybe it could be a future agenda.
Yeah,
item just
yeah.
to research and look at and just see.
If that's the tree board wants to, I mean, we've talked about it in our draft tree plan. So I think we can put it on as a bookmark for,
And
I think another thing that we talked about too was, in lieu of that, what could be done? Could, for example, members of the tree board act as moderators or something like that? To go to this homeowner and say, you know, what can we do to get this cleaned up? You know, let's be good neighbors. So I don't know that that's necessarily in our bylaws as one of our roles, but just on an informal basis to try and help Lisa.
I think there's no issue with tree board members individually acting as mediators, you know, trying to just resolve disputes. I mean, anytime we can resolve disputes between neighbors without them going to court is no problem. We have to walk that delicate balance of saying this is not an official action by the tree board of the city, that requesting or requiring you to do anything. It's just trying to solve any dispute between. So I don't foresee a problem with that. We just have to be careful on how we approach it.
How does the rest of tree board feel about that? You think this is a role that we should take?
Dana, would you repeat your question? And can I also just say, I can hear Victor well. I can hear the rest of you sometimes.
It's our speaker system.
Sue, one thing that we had talked about when we were over there was whether the tree board could play a role in mediating at least the situation of leaving all the trees on the ground at Lisa's house. So I just was wondering how everybody else on the tree board felt about that. But, you know, I would be willing to try it. I think Sue would be really good. Mark would be really good. Cece, you'd even have more teeth being on the council too. So just checking to see how other people feel about it. And maybe this is something that we could offer in the future in cases where there's a dispute.
I don't think CC being a council, we shouldn't approach this with having more teeth. It's whether she's on the council.
That's a good point.
It's more of just, do we want to assume this as a role? I know we've wanted to assume the tree board an informational, educational role. So I think from that approach,
maybe that's how it should be approached.
from that approach of educating, informing, I think that's a better role, in my opinion.
I'm not sure what the education would be, though. The education would be, these trees don't look good on the ground, you know?
Well, I mean,
Well,
It
maybe
could
it
be.
could be approached with, you know, like the erosion factor and maybe some ideas if they could, you know, cut them up or, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a way we could figure out some obscure environmental kind of thing. And as I said, if you see it, you'll see what I'm talking about. We're just gonna come-
so we are running a little bit into some time here, but maybe do you want to put this on a future agenda?
Yeah.
To talk about, future agenda item?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
That'd be great. And I'll share thoughts about that in email after the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Sue. All right, any other public comment? I did see one on YouTube by Scott Reese. We suffered more than $10,000 in damages from private cutting above on the bluff at 340 State Street. So that was just an additional comment. Any other public comment here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay, so we will go on to old business. Item 1, E1. So this was the Valley of Trees tree plant section. So Sue, thank you very much, had volunteered to redo my sloppy draft of Values of Trees section. And she did a really, really good job. Very well done, professional, good citations, good research. And then we passed it on to Dana to just add some edits, and she had some comments. So this was in your packet. Sue, I don't know if you want to add anything to what you've done, like to speak to how you went about it doing it, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's excellent.
And unless people have questions about it, I don't need to go over anything.
You did a good job.
Nice job, Sue.
Yeah,
Yeah, Sue, the whole first paragraph sounds like what I was just trying to say in my backyard.
Yeah.
All right, well, so I think this is really good. This is a great addition to our tree plan. It's coming along. We probably have 5 or 6 more sections that we have to do, but I think we're almost essentially halfway done with the draft. I'm still hoping for a draft to be done by the end of this year, but we'll keep on chugging along on this. So thank you, Sue, and thank you, Dana, for looking it over. Next item is, yes,
I need a copy of that?
of the draft tree plan.
Yes.
Email me after the meeting and I'll get you it. Yep. All right, next item agenda is bluff management presentation and discussion. So I am working on a presentation to City Council on our options for bluff management, whether it's editing the policy, creating a bluff management plan, et cetera. My goal was to present it at July 20th meeting, but we are running into a few different legal research questions that we're performing, that we're going through. We're doing a lot of legal research here, and it's going to take us a little bit longer. So I anticipate we're going to come to the council, the first meeting in August, with the full presentation. This is just a snippet of the presentation that I thought was relevant for the tree board. There's other parts that that I'm still working on that I don't think that we need to go over detail in here. But let me just go through this really quickly. This may be changed, modified, this part for the council presentation, but I'm just going to go through it. So the first thing I did was I looked at our master plan and to see what the master plan said about the bluff and our views. So views
just
was,
a clarification, this is the current master plan, not what they've been working on, correct?
this is the current master plan, yes.
That they're working on right now,
No, this is the master plan that's been approved and
Okay.
adopted by City Council as far as 2014.
yes.
Harbor Springs is a community of views and vistas that frame Little Traverse Bay. The city of Harbor Springs will retain its distinctive natural character defined by its waterfront settings, substantial bluffs and hillsides, and views of Little Traverse Bay. Harbor Springs will be a quaint and vibrant community with an attractive streetscape and amazing views. If appropriate, revised regulations to foster design which minimizes obstruction of views to and from the water.
That's a tough one.
The greatest natural sources within neighborhoods are views of Little Traverse Bay and Lake Michigan, sensitive sand dunes, and woodland areas. The intent of this future land use designation is to preserve the character of the neighborhoods and the views for the enjoyment of residents and visitors alike. A primary objective of this plan is to retain the views historically enjoyed from upgradient properties. The bluff contains natural springs that are a valuable natural resource and which may cause any development on the bluff to be subject to subsidence. The potential for soil erosion and damage to downgradient properties would be increased if the bluff were altered. This plan intends for the bluff to be protected from development. And then finally it says develop and implement a landscape plan for certain areas of the city, which includes the West Bluff. So in summary, obviously the importance of views in this master plan is emphasized several times. The bluff should not be developed by construction of residential or commercial buildings, and we have zoning regulations in effect that prohibit most development on bluff. Trees are hardly mentioned in the master plan. I did a control find. I just maybe 1 or 2 mentions of trees, so that's obviously something to consider going forward. The city should create a landscape plan for West Bluff, which is different than a bluff management plan. And the master plan does not make mention of whether or not to keep trees on the bluff, but does emphasize the importance of views. So we have this tension here already where, as you'll see based on the public survey that comes up next, that the master plan, what it says there, differs from the results we found in the public survey that we just did on the bluff management. So I'll go through the tree board stuff later. That's where you guys are gonna come in for your opinions and on this. But so we had 177 responses for the survey. The most important aspects of the bluff was ensuring the bluff's stability and preventing erosion and runoff. Improving views was ranked as second to least important. 94% of respondents wanted to see the city have a bluff management plan. 15% said that the city should solely be responsible for the cost to improve views, while 41% stated the city should be solely responsible for improving the bluff stability and preventing erosion. Basically meaning the neighbors, if you want to chop down trees for a view, the individual household should pay. But if you want to create a more stable bluff, that maybe that burden shouldn't be so much on the property owner that wants to see the stable bluff, but more so on the taxpayers. 75% said that a certified arborist should be involved in making decisions regarding tree trimming and removal. And this question that I had asked people to check off all the different types of people and roles that should be involved in making a decision. And there was a variety of responses there, but consistently an arborist was ranked as needing to be almost always involved in that decision. Whether it would be council, city staff, or neighbors, those had lower ranked, I guess they were just ranked lower. So 85% believe an applicant for a tree trimming request should hire his or her own certified arborist to create a report that's subject to city approval. And 79% stated that residents who disagree with a professional report should be required to provide a professional opinion of their own in order to successfully appeal a decision. So that's what we got back from the public survey based on the few questions that I had put out there just to get a general sense of where people stood. And as you can see, there's some tension between what the master plan says, that views are the most important thing, and then the responses here, where it says stability and erosion of the bluff are more important than the views. Any questions or thoughts so far?
Yes, are we going to share the results of the survey with Planning Commission? Should we put together a little presentation and
When
tell
the
them
plan-
what we're looking at and how
When-
that may differ from
When the
what
planning
they're
commission,
working on
yeah,
right now,
when the
right?
planning commission gets to that spot, when they seek public input, I will share all the surveys that I've done so far to date with them about anything. So, but when they come to that point, we talked about this yesterday, that they will, when they seek the public input, they will take this all into consideration. So,
I was surprised that trees have such a little part of the master plan. In fact, that very first sentence there, it sort of seems like we have two things opposing one another. It says the greatest natural resources are views of Little Traverse Bay and our woodland areas. To get those views, you're taking away woodland areas. It just sort of, I didn't realize the issue there, how they conflict, so to speak. So I just found that interesting.
Yep.
Is there a way to include the second bluff or have a look at that?
I don't think this really,
So you would say all bluff is what I'm saying, you know?
so what we're focusing on for this bluff management is public property. The city can only control public property. Maybe as far as future ordinances, we can talk about private, but yeah, for this, so I should make that clear. This is about the public.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right, so what I've been doing, and please don't take these as final word, but I've been just trying to do different revisions of our current policy and just different options going forward and run them by the tree board. And after we're done, running through this, my main question to the tree board is, what will be our objectives for the bluff? What should our objectives be? And how do we get to those objectives? And then that would be included in this presentation to council. I have sat down with Ben, I think a couple weeks ago, we sat down and talked about, I don't know, a good hour and a half about some of these things. So I already had the professional opinion from Ben, but I want to get the tree board's opinion as well. So I've included in your packet a sample edits of potential edits. This is option 1A, light revision of the policy, which would require arborist report to be more specific in the exact number and location of trees to be trimmed or removed. Defines the notification radius as 500 feet from location of the request, clarifies the goals and objectives, and states that the city's arborists cannot perform the vegetation management on said property. These were all concerns that were brought up in meetings and in the survey, so I thought they were, yep.
Just briefly, could we add species to that first one?
It could be added, yeah. That's,
I think that was one of the things that came up in the last request.
so that was option 1 1A, and there's more to it. But this is the general gist of what that edits would be. The second one would be the same thing as a light revision, but plus requirements that the applicant hires a certified arborist to create a report that then is reviewed by our arborist. So it kind of puts the burden on the applicant to get their ducks in a row, and then our staff just performs a review of the request that they're making. There's the benefits of that is we're not leaving it up to staff to kind of pick and choose. The negative side of that is that it leaves bluff management essentially to the hands of the property owners. City manager will solicit public opinion, but the application will only go to council if neighboring property owners who disagree with the reports submit a certified professional's opinion. The idea of this is you're trying to get away from someone forestalling a project because of unbacked, I guess, claims, or because they just simply don't like it. If we have a professional opinion by our city's arborist that approves a report or that has a professional opinion, there should be if that's going to be contested successfully, I believe there should probably be some professional opinion saying, well, no, this is where the arborist is wrong. This is a hydrogeologist says, this tree trimming could cause this problem, or this ecologist could say this removal of these specific species would cause this problem. I think that's fair if we're gonna rebuke a professional's opinion. There should be another professional opinion. However, that's just one suggestion. It doesn't have to be that way.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
You talk about two separate arborists, so the city have a separate independent arborist from the applicant?
So the applicant would hire their own arborist to submit a report, and then our arborist would review that report.
And who's our arborist currently?
Right here, Ben.
So he's also been doing reports for the applicants in the past.
So it would have to be a separate arborist. It couldn't be the same arborist.
Correct.
So they would hire a separate arborist. Option C is incorporate a variety of vegetation management requests, allow residents below the bluff to submit plans to plant vegetation or help stabilize the bluff. So we're not just talking about tree trimming now, we're talking about also requests for people to stabilize the bluff. Applicants would be required to submit a fee and would be financially responsible for any work performed. So that's one option. Option two is do nothing. City will let nature take its course and only trim remove trees that are hazardous, so such as those that would jeopardize city infrastructure or structures on private property. Right now, this option doesn't jive with the current master plan's goals of creating views of Little Traverse Bay, and maybe letting nature take its course might not necessarily be the best route for stabilizing the bluff. We also may see an increase in protest of tax values if views are lost due to lack of trimming. Those are just one thing. So landscape plan, option 4, I left option 3 out because we're still doing legal research on that one. So there is an option 3, but landscape plan is called for in the master plan. It is different than a management plan because it primarily focuses on aesthetics. It would be expensive, several hundreds of thousands of dollars or more, depending on whether or not we'd want to terrace it. And the process for removing, planting certain vegetation can get costly. If incorporated into a bluff management plan, the landscape plan could improve aesthetics as well as views and stability. And finally, there's the option 5, the bluff management plan. This would be the city creating a bluff management plan that is not influenced or dictated by individual requests, but instead by the city council, master plan, tree board, staff, and professional experts' opinions, such as arborists, hydrogeologists, ecologists, and maybe even the land trust. The aim would be to fulfill the city's primary objectives for the bluff, and then the council would need to determine those primary objectives based on feedback, the master plan, and professional opinion. How much will it cost? This is just an estimate. We have about a total of 2,200 feet of frontage, not including shade drain, of public-owned bluff. Probably about $1,000 for 15 feet of frontage. This was taken off of, Ben, you gave me that estimate about for 66 feet. It was about a little over $4,000 to do, so. For clearing, yeah. So this is a little higher end cost, but it's an estimate. So the entire bluff to do it would cost up to $145,000. And what's included in those costs is the planning and assessment of the area, the actual cutting and trimming, safe removal of the vegetation from the site if that's what's necessary, and any necessary restorations or plantings. Costs can be spread out over a period of time, and each year the city could focus on a specific section. If we had to manage 200 feet, we could spread it out over 20 years and do, 110 feet at a time. Or we can allocate a certain amount of money for the bluff management each year, depending on what our budget would allow. But who will pay? It's the question, general fund, all taxpayers. A special assessment for those below above the bluff, because they'll directly benefit, a combination of the two. I mean, it seems like the general thought is, based on the survey results, that most people think it's the city, general taxpayers that should pay, but that's up to council to make that decision. So what would the plan consist of? The city could create a committee of residents, staff, board members, and hire professionals to craft the plan. Basic issues that would need to be addressed are establishing objectives. Dealing with the fact that larger trees means fewer trees, and it also means huge tracts of uncovered area due to shaded area, which contributes to the runoff. So we would want trees that have smaller canopy. We would need multiple size plant species, ground layer, understory, and taller trees. If we do nothing, Norway maple and box elder will regenerate, and they are decay-prone trees. Deer, the situation with the deer, they don't just eat the food on the bluff is a corridor for them. So simply planting deer-resistant food won't work to get rid of the deer because they need to get up and down the bluff regardless of the food source. Plus, if the food, and this, I talked to Ben about this one, the food that the deer don't eat are the plants we don't want. Finally, brush slows down deer movement. If we remove brush, we increase deer speed, which increases erosion and runoff. Essentially, what I've taken from my conversations and discussions, we must reduce canopy height, have a variety of species and size of trees, and not let the trees get too old. But there still is an issue of rainwater pouring over M119 onto the bluff, which contributes to runoff and erosion. So that is just part of my so far presentation and options. I guess I so far get some tree board's feedback on any of that.
Victor, is this basically just for West Bluff, or is this the entire?
This is for all publicly owned bluff, which is essentially the West Bluff, and we have one tiny portion of East Bluff and then the shade drain. So it's mostly just the West Bluff.
Has any thought been given to contacting MDOT about, the water that is flowing down from the streets that enter into 119? I mean, obviously, stability of the bluff. There's a lot of water that comes down there during rainstorms. The 2x4 or the 2x6 that they have along there that they put in, deter some of it, but I think there should be I'm just wondering if the state has been approached to look at this problem and get perhaps their expertise, a hydrologist in or something.
Ben, have we done that before?
There was a discussion with Fred Gooder about curbing and guttering to manage some of that stuff, especially after there was some erosive events that affected, I believe it was shear orange when they still in there. Kirby's now. The problem that we ran into is that they seem to feel that doing that would require other additions to M119 that they weren't willing to do at that time. But that's also 20 years ago. So they may have a different position and or a different manager.
Good points. So that's a good point, Mark.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Would this be an option 6 or 7? I don't know what we're up to. But I'm back and forth there like multiple times a day. We live just up the hill there. And in driving by, it seems like a whole lot of the view issues could be mitigated by just taking the first 10 feet and cutting back the box elders. There's a whole bunch of box elders as you get towards State Road. And that would be really a cheap, easy way just to trial. What if we did just manage those first 10 feet? And that would be a start anyways. And then that might reduce the number of requests from above. It respects the people below. And we could do it just on a trial basis.
So I don't know, I can't speak to whether that's a good idea or not, but I do know that probably would fit in the a bluff management, because either way, the council has to decide whether or not they want to, when or how they're going to lift the moratorium. And my direction was to come back with a revised policy or revised solutions. And I feel that would probably fit better in, let's talk about a bluff management plan and whether that's the correct plan for managing the bluff.
Yeah, I guess my thought was, what if we don't have to turn this into a whole big, complicated, expensive thing? What if we just look at those 10 feet? Let's just try it, because we know that those are going to grow back, within a year. And let's just see if that might be a way to address it without, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the county used to use the brush mower to go to the other side of the guardrail, which gives us about 18 feet. I think the distances are deceptive, and so 10 feet from the side of the road.
That's a little arbitrary too.
And, general observations would be that it doesn't do much. I mean, it would remove some of the brush, and I think that it's low cost, and that it would grow back quickly, and it wouldn't remove stumps. I mean, the things that you're cutting are small enough that they would grow back from stump shoots pretty quickly. Like there wouldn't be we wouldn't change the ecosystem instantly if you were to do that. But now there's some discussion because people have been a couple places landscaping on the side of the road across from their houses. And that may be an interesting conversation.
I haven't seen that at all.
There's,
Just beyond Heifer going east, you'll see like some irises and some other types of flowering shrubs and.
Well, what I'm concerned about in this option, just me talking, Dan, is that would it be, hey, we present this option, but people still are allowed to submit requests? Or do we say, do we keep the moratorium, then this is, so I feel like if we're going to go down this route, it's just similar to establishing some sort of plan. Now, whether it's not an entire bluff management plan, it's something that will substitute the current policy.
Okay, could we make option 6 then?
Yeah.
An interim plan where we could trial this, where the city or Ben or whomever could just go at, the first 10 feet. That's a little arbitrary. We could have a field trip maybe and see what makes sense and just try it as an interim trial. We could call it an interim trial before we jump off and do something major.
Well, this would be the tree board's recommend. I want to present options from the tree board, so I guess Mark, Cece.
Oh, go ahead, Susie.
No, you go.
As I look at these options, I would love to have a management plan where individual requests are just taken out of it totally. And depend on the experts, our arborist, any hydrologist. I think when you get individual requests, you're beginning to pit upper bluff people behind lower bluff people. And I would rather get the individual requests out of it. And I think that the city would be wise. I know there's the expense of it, but I think they'd be wise to come up with a management plan that looks at the science behind what we're doing. So that would be my preference of just having a plan where individual requests aren't made.
Cece, you have any thoughts?
If we did do, if we managed it, the only problem I have with that is that we're still going to be getting requests until the whole thing is done, especially if we do it in sections. I mean, because $140,000 at one time, that's more than I think the city budget needs to do. So we would probably be still getting the requests. And so I just don't know what the right answer is.
Sue, do you have any comments on the phone?
It's a little bit hard to follow. You're actually, you've laid out options for where to go next with the bluff management question, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay, and those options include, a bigger plan versus the more limited stopgap measures?
yeah, basically it's, do we have a bigger management plan, or do we just do some revisions to our current policy, which is still on a individual request basis?
Oh. Okay, right, and so, and I thought, to build on what Mark said, I think we don't want to be in the business or put city council in the business of looking at individual request by individual request. It makes more sense to have a plan than to have a policy. I mean, how do you manage vegetation by policy? You really, that's fine if what we're doing is looking at individual property and saying our policy for private property management is you can't cut a tree larger than whatever. I mean, but to say that we have a policy for managing the bluff is a little much. I agree that some kind of plan needs to be the first step.
Okay. Any other comments on the board before I open it up to the public? Anyone in the audience? Yes.
Sure.
Gary?
Yeah, I'm representing the Shea Park group of neighbors. So my question back to your point, Mark, and to the discussion about how we would have the tree board in the city begin to set a management plan that no longer attends to private residents' requests. How would the Shea Park group fit into that regime? Because there are no disputes there. I infer, Mark, one of the things you're concerned about, if I'm hearing you, is that you don't want to be in the situation of always being arbiters between disputes among neighbors, and I can understand that. So back to my basic point about the Shea Park program, it's different than the other parts of the bluff, primarily because there's no one at the bottom of the hill. So there we have a situation where 8 neighbors get together with the city arborist. They do have different views. I mean, they don't have the same situation, but they are able to talk together and come up with a consensus plan, subject to the erosion and environmental standards of the arborist. And then every year we put that plan in. There's no contest, there's no disputes. So my hope representing that group is that we can continue to work successfully with the Shea Park group in a consensus way to keep the bluff trimmed mostly of brush pursuant to environmental standards as represented by the city arborist.
Gary, I understand where you're coming from, and as I've been thinking about this, it's kind of hard to have one plan for the entire bluff because you have the stability problems on West Bluff. You don't have it there so much where Shea Park is. So I would hope that there'd be some flexibility in whatever plan that we come up to that, again, relying on our experts, if that's what we're going to be doing, taking individual requests out of it, working with people, working with our experts to come up with decisions. I would hope there'd be some flexibility to take your situation.
I also assume it's how we approach bluff management. Are we coming from the approach, we're only doing this plan because we want to resolve disputes between neighbors? Or are we going with this plan because we have objectives with the bluff, whether it's stability, runoff, views, whatever it may be, that we want to fulfill? If we come in from that approach, then of course there'll be different areas of the bluff are going to have different needs, I think, but I guess we have to, obviously this discussion aroused because of a dispute, essentially a difference in opinion about what should be happening on the bluff. So obviously we're here today because of that, but should we be going forward because of disputes or because of we have objectives that we want to fulfill?
I think it's objective. I mean, obviously the West Bluff has got some issues, so.
Any other?
Yeah,
Yes.
I would think.
Oh, sorry,
Excuse me.
yeah, Kurt.
I'd like to acknowledge you for going deep into this and giving a lot of options. I think it's fantastic. I think it takes it out of the individual with Ben standing on their sidewalk or their driveway or their master bedroom or their garage saying, let's get rid of that. I'd like it to and it's like an individual gets to plan the aesthetic of the town, and I think that's crazy. I think it's super great to have a plan and to take the individual's taste or desire out of it and make it for the whole community. I really, really appreciate that, Victor. Thank you so much for at least working towards that.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yeah, I'm Wayne Avis, at 476 4th Street. And I've been involved in this whole thing since 1995, when the first tree management plan, view management plan was put forth by the Sungat Michigan State. And I've been involved with the trees being cut down in my backyard. I won't be long, be very short on this. The basic question is, it used to be management, vegetation management. It's really a view management plan is what we're talking about. My biggest concern is still the erosion above the trees hold it in. And one of the things I'd like to make sure we do is we talk about diameter trees and what's a 4-inch diameter. That's not the issue. The issue isn't how wide the tree is, the issue is how tall it is. And so what they're asking for is a 70-foot tree to be cut down because the top 10 feet obstructs their view, offends their view. And that's the type of management plan that we need to really look at. So first of all, on a equality basis, does it make sense for one person to have a tree cut down to improve their view? And the other is the erosion control and the plus stability. And when I hear about the arborist, and no question he's not our arborist, your arborist is well qualified as an arborist. If it's flat and it's a tree out here on flat property, that's one thing. If it's on a bluff that has a gradient of 60% or so, whatever it is there, behind my house, it's completely different. You need to have hydrogeologists in there because if that thing fails, and I've spoken to the state of Michigan, I've spoken to the MDOT people about that. And their answer at the time, this 3 years ago, is that they can't stop the city from doing that, but if the city did do it and it was proved that erosion and failure of West Bluff in 119 came down, that the state could then go back at the city for the cost of reconstructing it. And we know from the cost of Lower Shore Drive when that failed, it was, I think, $300,000 to $400,000 for that one small chunk. So we need to talk about two things. One, the purpose of the tree management, quote unquote, view management, and two, the other factors that brings up, particularly the erosion.
Thank you, Wayne. Any other
One
comments?
thing, just if we're gonna do this, and I had sent an email based on your survey, and I had to the people I emailed. So there's 3 questions. What questions did he ask? 2, how did he ask them? And 3, what questions were not asked? And one of the things on there was, who should pay for a quote dispute? And to have somebody pay to defend themselves against an action of somebody else's, is an undue burden when it's city property in between what we're talking about. So if people above me say, I'm gonna cut down all the trees in front of me, and I've got to go to court to defend myself, and it's a city property, they're cutting the trees down, it doesn't make sense to me, because I did not initiate the action.
So I'll justify why I put that question on there. It's because there's so few limited people that would be benefiting from a direct benefit of lack of stability or erosion on the bluff. It's the people who are right on 4th Street. This issue came up with the FEMA flood project. The idea was tossed around that we would do a special assessment because of work that we do on public property would directly improve the flood zone situation for private residents. So the idea was toyed around of doing a special assessment. It was an option. We didn't go down that route. I recommended against it. But my idea of putting it out there was because it is an option for if council is going to consider the way to pay for something, they should know of all the ways to pay for it, and that they legally have the ways. So by getting the public's opinion on that, that helps inform us where the public stands on that and if there's a political will to do some sort of special assessment. Because someone, anywhere else in the city, it's really only 4th Street people that are going to benefit from improved stability of the bluff, and it's only people above the bluff that are going to, I guess, benefit from views. But you can make an argument that stable bluff is good for the public, and you can make an argument based on the master plan that improved views are a benefit to the public. So that's why I put that question down there, who should pay and how it should be paid. Not because I was trying to get at that these people need to pay or don't pay.
Yeah,
I
and
want-
it was neighbors, and I love the neighbor.
Yeah.
If we get in a dispute, we're arguing about our property and we're gonna pay each and take care of that. But if I've got the city in between and the city's actually doing the work, then it puts us in a completely different position.
I understand, yeah, no. I wasn't trying to be biased in my questions. Yes, John?
I gotta take a turn here. First of all, I want to agree and thank you for going into the level of depth that you went into, which you are prone to do, which really benefits the town and certainly council with decision making. I'm so glad we're finally having a discussion about managing city property by the city with an overall plan. I was very concerned when we started that some of the options said, well, we're actually going to make the disputes between upper and lower worse by getting people down below to have to defend themselves from an action from above. I agree with Mark. The way to go is to have a plan, well, with Mark and with others. The way is for the city to manage city property, to come up with a comprehensive plan. This is an issue that's been neglected for many, many years. And having individual requests and disputes and resolutions is not the way to go. And we know that because we've been living with it. So we need to come up with a plan that will look at long-term. If it's $145,000 or $250,000, it's the price we pay to get to where we should already have been. And then maintain it from then on out. And I would expect that a plan would include the regional differences between East and West. If something isn't broken and we have a working model, then let's incorporate that, but let's have a city plan that will maintain city property for all residents going forward. And I agree with the master plan as it exists today and will likely exist in the future. Views is one of the assets within the city, not just for residents, but for tourists. We're a tourist town. Let's factor that in, but let's do it right.
Thank you, John. Any other comments, I guess, wrapping up with the board? I guess I want to really, what in the board's perspective, I know I got the process of, I'm sensing that a plan is better than an individual requests. I mean, I think I got that from all of the board members. But based on your guys' knowledge of, what should be our primary objective from the tree board's perspective for the bluff? And I guess
That brings up the first thing we should do is what are the objectives for the city in managing the bluff? And that kind of drives what the plan should look like from there.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get here is what do you think the objectives are? So, I mean,
we did, I think one of the primary objectives has to be stabilized, making sure the bluff is stabilized. And it's stabilized, and I think the respondents to your questionnaire showed that pretty strongly as well. I would see that as one of our top priorities. I don't think of the bay as as high a priority as the stabilization.
I guess that's what I was getting at. So in the board's opinion, if correct me if I'm wrong, the bluff stability should always be the primary concern, whether or not there's a difference in opinion of it, if it is or isn't stable as it exists right now, but stability should be a top concern. And then a secondary objective would be the view. And then when I say stability, I mean everything that's associated with it. My survey had, stability, runoff, erosion, but those are all kind of like clumped in together. I was trying to gauge public's understanding and sense of what they meant by that question. But so what I'm gathering from here is stability and then views.
That brings up the question of who should do the management plan, because there's so much more to stability than just trees.
Of course, and that's why I think in my I included that you should, ecologist, hydrogeologist, arborist, whoever's necessary to be involved in that would
So
be.
maybe that's a first line of attack is, what profession would be best to be the umbrella over the plan? And then under them would be arborists, and under them would be hydrologist.
And I think, from my opinion, that's why getting some sort of committee together, the council would form would be
I
able to
think that was
best.
an excellent idea too, with that broad range of people on the committee.
Thanks. Any other thoughts on that? Sue, do you have any thoughts?
I'm very much on the same page as everybody else here. The number one concern should be stability, and aesthetics should come after that. I hate to hear us talk about it just as view, because the view privileges the aesthetic benefits that people on the top of the bluff get, and discounts what the people at the bottom of the bluff are left to look at. And people do look at the town from the waterfront looking up, as well as from the bluff looking down. Both directions, the aesthetics matter. I don't know if that matters ultimately to what we do, but I think that's worth wordsmithing that, to not call it the view. But then, and then the process points that I've heard from others that are important too, is that the plan should be done professionally, and the plan should be done with public input.
Yes. Thank you, Sue. So I think, not to belabor this point unless there's any other comments, but that's what I'll bring as the summary to the council from the tree board, that this is where the tree board stands. Yes,
Can I ask
Wayne?
another question? Do you have a record of bluff failures over the years since the trees have been cut?
By record, I do have saved emails on our computer system of incidents, save an incident where there was a cut and the city actually paid several $100s. One of our contractors, this was probably in the early 2000s, late 90s, damaged something on someone's property that the city paid maybe $600. But so I do have email records of, as far as failure of the bluff, no, but as far as like incidents on the bluff, yes.
And I can speak, I have not had a failure behind me, but both neighbors, Dilly has, and at 442, when Jeff Skaw had it, and he's still in town, he'll come in and testify, he's offered that, they cut the trees, clear cut it, bluff came down, filled its boat up with rocks, and then they repaired, it's part of West Bluff. But we should know the history all up and down to say, well, when we've done this, this has been the actual result, action.
And I think that would be if the bluff management plan is something that council wants to go
That
Go
may
with
predate emails, what I'm saying.
Well, it may, I mean, but,
There are people in town who know who forget email.
yeah,
This also might be a good opportunity for some education too, because you're gonna make your erosion and environmental factors as the number one. When you get all this information from the hydrologists and things like that, that might be a good opportunity to have some like explanation how some of this stuff works and what goes, what doesn't, and what is the best route forward, and that's where the education can come in and kind of work for everyone.
thank you. So any other comments at the table? All right, so I don't think I need any vote, but this, I got you guys, I think there's consensus on how you want your views to be presented. The last agenda item, if we go on to new business, is election of officers. As you guys have probably copies of the bylaws are approved of city council. So tree board has always been official, but now it's more official. So let's, I guess, we have two positions that need to be filled. Obviously Jeff Granger is not here, but I still say we elect a chair and a vice chair before we find a new member. It's just, we don't know how long that might take. So the first chair, I guess it's for the chair. And just want to make sure I do it right based on our bylaws. The chairman shall preside over all meetings and shall exercise all customary duties of the chair. She'll be an ex officio member of all committees of the board, if we ever form committees. And the chairman shall have the privilege of discussing all matters before the board and to vote thereon. The vice chairman shall preside and exercise the duties of chairman in the absence of the chairman. And I will act as a secretary according to bylaws as a city manager. So do we have any nominations for anyone to serve as chair?
I would nominate Mark to be our chair.
We have a nomination by Cece for Mark Gilbert to be chair. Any second?
Would you
I
be
will.
willing?
I would second it.
Dana Mulder seconds. Any discussion? All right,
Great idea.
so that's a yes from Sue. Dana Mulder,
Yes.
Cece Johnson,
Yes.
and Mark Gilbert. He shakes his head. So, all right, Mark is our new chair, so that means you're gonna sit in the middle next time where I'm sitting, and I'll sit on that end. And then we have a nomination for vice chairman.
I'd like to nominate Sue.
We have a nomination by Dana Mulder for Sue Stewart to serve as vice chair.
I will second that.
Cece Johnson seconds. Any discussion? Sue, do you accept the nomination?
Yeah,
Okay. Mark Gilbert,
Yes.
Cece Johnston,
Yes.
Dana Mulder,
Yes.
and Sue Irish. Oh, Sue Stewart, sorry.
yeah, sure.
All right, Sue is the vice chairman. Well, congrats, thank you guys. And I think that concludes our meeting for the day. So we'll meet again in August 21st. Oh, sorry, we have one more item.
Yep, we had a DDA committee meeting this morning for the Downtown Enhancement Committee about the tree grate project. And we're taking the big price that everybody came back with and trying to do a deeper dive on, what we could do to affect that. And one of the things we looked at was tree pricing was a lot more than we expected. So I said that I would try and find out where the tree board had gotten trees for Shea Park, and I think you got great prices on them, right? And was it somebody from out of town that did the work?
No, I think that bid went to David
Hoffman, yeah.
or he's the one that submitted the bid that was accepted.
Okay, all right. Good to know. Thanks.
All right, with that said, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Sue.